Over 85% of Mercedes owners are unknowingly destroying their automatic transmissions with everyday driving habits. You paid for flawless, effortless German engineering, but taking that smooth gearbox for granted is a massive mistake. Right now, you are likely performing simple actions that are silently tearing your transmission to shreds. Today, we are exposing the 10 daily mistakes that guarantee a catastrophic $6,000 rebuild. Mistake number 7 is terrifyingly common, but the final mistake is something almost every driver does entirely by accident. Let's save your gearbox and dive right in. Number 10. The rolling direction. Change. We have all been in a rush to leave the house. You back out of your driveway, glancing in your rearview mirror. But before your sedan comes to a complete stop, you yank the gear selector from reverse into drive and step on the accelerator. To you, it feels like saving 2 seconds. To your transmission, it is a kinetic nightmare. Let us dive into the mechanical physics of what you are doing. Your vehicle weighs over 4,000 pounds. When rolling backward, it possesses rearward momentum. Inside your transmission is a precise system of steel planetary gears and friction clutch packs. When you throw the vehicle into drive while rolling backward, you force those internal components to arrest thousands of pounds of rearward kinetic energy and reverse the direction of force to propel you forward. The shockwave of this directional change does not just damage the teeth of the planetary gears, it sends a twisting vibration down the drive shaft. This rotational stress attacks the rubber flex discs, known as guibo joints, located at both ends of the drive shaft. It also applies stress to your transmission mounts. Over time, these components will tear apart. Your car will develop a vibration underneath your seat every time you accelerate. Always bring the vehicle to a complete stop before changing directions. The 2 seconds you save will eventually cost you a $3,000 transmission rebuild. But if you think a rolling shift is destructive, wait until you discover the fuel-saving myth that is starving your transmission to death. Number 9. Coasting in neutral. Downhill. There is a dangerous myth passed down through generations of drivers. It claims that if you are driving down a steep hill, you should shift your automatic transmission into neutral to save gasoline. Drivers believe that by disconnecting the engine from the wheels, they are allowing the car to coast and operate at maximum efficiency. This logic is wrong for modern vehicles. It is a death sentence for your gearbox. First, let us destroy the fuel-saving myth. Modern Mercedes-Benz vehicles are equipped with electronic fuel injection systems. When you leave the vehicle in drive while coasting down a steep hill, the computer shuts off the fuel injectors. The forward momentum of the wheels keeps the engine turning over. You burn zero fuel. When you shift into neutral, the computer is forced to turn the fuel injectors back on to keep the engine idling. You are burning more gasoline. Here is the mechanical failure you are causing. The hydraulic pump inside your transmission is driven by the rotational speed of the engine. When you shift into neutral at highway speeds, the engine drops to 600 revolutions per minute. The hydraulic pump slows down, producing little fluid pressure and pushing a minimal volume of lubricating oil. However, your rear wheels are still spinning at 70 miles per hour, which means the output shaft of your transmission is also spinning at 70 miles per hour inside the gearbox. You have metal components rotating with barely any lubrication. The bearings inside the transmission will overheat from the dry friction, scoring the metal and causing a whining failure. Never coast in neutral. If this myth blew your mind, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to ensure you never fall for these expensive automotive lies again. Speaking of expensive lies, the next mistake is a maneuver drivers use to show off, and it results in an explosive mechanical failure. Number 8. The infamous neutral. Drop. You are sitting at a red light. A sports car pulls up next to you and revs its engine. A surge of adrenaline hits you. You want to prove the dominance of your twin turbocharged engine. In a moment of foolishness, you shift your transmission into neutral. You press your foot onto the accelerator, sending the engine up to 4,000 revolutions per minute. At the exact moment the light turns green, you slam the gear selector into drive. This is called a neutral drop, and it is the fastest way to destroy your vehicle. To understand the horror of this action, you must understand the anatomy of a clutch pack. Inside your automatic transmission are drums filled with alternating layers of steel plates and friction discs. Under normal acceleration, the hydraulic valve body routes pressurized fluid to squeeze these plates together smoothly, transferring power from the engine to the wheels. When you execute a neutral drop, the engine is already spinning with explosive rotational force. When you slam the shifter into drive, the computer attempts to engage the forward gear instantly. The hydraulic fluid slams the clutch packs together in a fraction of a second. The friction material cannot handle the instantaneous transfer of 400 horsepower. The teeth on the edges of the friction plates will shear off. The steel drums will crack under the shock load. The impact will send shards of steel shrapnel circulating through your transmission fluid system, clogging the mechatronic valve body. You will hear a metallic bang, the vehicle will shudder, and you will not move an inch forward. You just created a $7,000 pile of scrap metal. Showing off at a red light is a quick way to go bankrupt, but our next mistake is something drivers do by accident while trying to secure their vehicle on a steep incline. Number 7. The incline parking. Powell. Trap. You arrive at a hillside destination. You pull your sport utility vehicle into a parking spot on a steep incline. You take your foot off the accelerator, press the brake pedal, and push the gear selector into park. You turn off the engine, release the brake pedal, and the vehicle rocks backward with a mechanical clunk. You think nothing of it and walk away. You are torturing one of the smallest, most vital components in your vehicle. When you shift an automatic transmission into park, it does not apply the brake pads to the wheels. Instead, it utilizes a component called a parking powell. This is a hardened finger of steel, roughly the size of a human thumb, attached to the casing of the transmission. When you engage park, this metal finger drops down and wedges itself between the teeth of a steel gear on the transmission output shaft. When you park on a steep hill without utilizing your emergency brake, the resting weight of your vehicle relies exclusively on that single metal thumb. The pressure binds the parking pole against the gear. When you return to your vehicle and attempt to shift back into drive, you will feel resistance on the shifter, followed by a loud bang that shakes the cabin. This release causes stress fractures inside the metal powell. Over years of repeating this habit, that metal finger will snap in half. Your transmission will no longer hold the vehicle in park, and your car will roll away down the hill. Here is the sequence to prevent this. While holding the foot brake, shift the vehicle into neutral. Engage your emergency parking brake. Release your foot off the brake pedal, allowing the weight of the vehicle to settle onto the rear brake calipers. Once the vehicle is stable, shift the transmission into park. Saving your parking powell requires patience, but what happens when you're stranded on the side of the highway and the person coming to rescue you is about to cause $10,000 in mechanical damage? Number 6. Towing on the drive wheels. It is a driver's nightmare. You are cruising down the interstate when an electrical failure shuts down your engine. You coast to the shoulder and call for roadside assistance. An hour later, a tow truck arrives. But instead of a flatbed truck, it is an older wheel lift truck. The driver hooks up the front wheels of your rear-wheel drive sedan, lifts the front end into the air, and prepares to drag your vehicle 30 miles to the dealership with the rear tires rolling on the asphalt. You must scream at them to stop. This scenario represents a catastrophic lack of mechanical knowledge. As established earlier, the hydraulic oil pump inside your automatic transmission is driven by the rotational movement of the engine. If the engine is dead, that hydraulic pump is stationary. There is zero fluid pressure, and zero lubricating oil is circulating to the internal components. However, because the rear wheels are in contact with the pavement as the tow truck drags the vehicle at 60 miles per hour, the drive shaft is spinning. This means the transmission output shaft and the rear planetary gear sets are spinning inside the transmission casing. They are spinning at highway speeds with no cooling oil and no lubrication. Within the first 3 miles of towing, the dry friction will generate so much heat that the metal bearings will melt and fuse together. The internal gears will weld themselves into a solid chunk of destroyed metal. By the time the tow truck reaches the dealership, your drivetrain will be annihilated. If your vehicle cannot be shifted into neutral and driven onto a flatbed tow truck, demand that the tow operator uses rolling dollies underneath the drive wheels. Never allow the drive wheels to roll while the engine is dead. If this warning saved your vehicle from a towing disaster, drop a comment below and tell me your worst tow truck experience. But dealing with a bad tow truck is a rare emergency. The next mistake is a silent assassin that budget-conscious owners invite into their garage every time they attempt to perform their own maintenance. Number 5. The universal fluid sabotage. In an effort to save money, many owners skip the dealership service center and perform their own transmission fluid changes at home. They drive to the auto parts store and purchase cheap jugs of fluid labeled Universal Full Synthetic Automatic Transmission Fluid. The bottle claims it works in almost every European vehicle. The owner pours this liquid into their gearbox, unaware they just signed its death warrant. Mercedes-Benz engineers do not use standard hydraulic fluid. Depending on your production year, whether you possess the 5-speed, 7-speed, or 9-speed gearbox, the transmission requires a specific chemical fluid specification, such as 2368 or 2364. These genuine fluids contain a complex cocktail of chemical friction modifiers. These modifiers are designed to interact with the fibrous materials glued onto the internal clutch packs. The torque converter lockup clutch, which engages to improve your highway fuel economy, relies on the exact coefficient of friction provided by the genuine fluid. When you pour universal fluid into the system, the chemical friction modifiers are wrong. The torque's DNA converter clutch will begin to slip and grab, causing a shudder throughout the vehicle every time you accelerate through 40 miles per hour. Furthermore, the incorrect chemical additives can become electrically conductive over time. This electrically charged fluid will short out the speed sensors located on the mechatronic conductor plate. You tried to save $100 on maintenance fluids and you caused a $3,000 electronic failure. Always demand genuine, manufacturer-approved transmission fluid. Using the wrong fluid is chemically destructive, but what happens when you use the perfect fluid, but your careless maintenance habits introduce an invisible killer into the valve body? Number 4, the unseen dirt. During maintenance. Let us continue with the scenario of the amateur mechanic crawling underneath their vehicle to service the transmission. They are feeling incredibly proud. They watched a short tutorial online, they want to save $500 in dealership labor, and they have purchased the highly expensive genuine fluid. They slide under the chassis, unbolt the steel transmission pan, drain the old dark fluid, replace the internal paper filter, and prepare to bolt everything back together. They think they are performing absolute mechanical perfection, but they completely skipped one vital, mandatory first step, and this single oversight will violently destroy the transmission within a week. They failed to meticulously clean the exterior of the transmission casing before opening it. Your transmission sits mere inches above the pavement, constantly exposed to the harshest elements imaginable. Over the course of 50,000 miles, the exterior casing becomes coated in a thick, solid layer of nasty road grime, microscopic sand, jagged rust flakes, and corrosive winter salt debris. The extreme thermal heat cycles of the engine block literally bake this dirty sludge into a hard, brittle crust surrounding the transmission pan gasket. When you grab your wrench and unbolt the transmission pan without aggressively scrubbing the entire perimeter of the casing with strong brake cleaner and a wire brush first, you actively risk knocking that brittle debris directly into the highly exposed underside of the open transmission. The mechatronic valve body, which sits completely bare and exposed the very second the bottom pan is removed, is an absolute marvel of microscopic precision. It is the computerized brain and the hydraulic heart of your gearbox. It contains dozens of sensitive electronic solenoids and a massive, complex maze of winding hydraulic channels. The internal tolerances of these polished aluminum valves are incredibly tight, literally measured in the thousandths of an inch. They are designed to operate with surgically clean fluid, not gritty road dirt. If a single microscopic grain of sand or a tiny flake of oxidized rust drops from the dirty upper casing and finds its way inside the exposed valve body, it is a ticking time bomb. The moment you start the engine, the hydraulic pump will suck that debris directly into one of those microscopic solenoids. The tiny sand grain will physically gouge and jam the polished metal valve, permanently preventing it from opening or closing. Suddenly, as you merge onto the highway, your transmission violently shudders and completely loses the ability to shift into third gear. The vehicle computer will instantly detect the catastrophic hydraulic pressure failure, trigger a massive check engine light, and permanently lock the vehicle into a terrifying limp mode. When you attempt to service a complex German gearbox, your garage environment, your hands, and your tools must be surgically clean. One single microscopic grain of sand is absolutely a guaranteed luxury vehicle automatic transmission killer today. Keeping things clean is vital, but what happens when the weather turns, the roads freeze over, and desperation causes you to boil the fluid inside your torque converter? Number 3, the snow rocking meltdown. It is the dead of winter. A blizzard has buried your neighborhood. You attempt to back out of your driveway, but your vehicle sinks into a snowdrift. The rear wheels begin to spin, whining as they polish the snow into a sheet of ice. Panic sets in. You need to get to work. You remember your grandfather telling you to rock the car back and forth to gain momentum and break free. So you begin throwing the gear selector from drive to reverse over and over, while keeping your foot planted on the gas pedal. This is the worst action you can take. When you shift between drive and reverse while the engine RPM is elevated and the wheels are spinning without traction, the transmission does not have enough time to engage the internal clutch packs. Because the clutch packs never lock together, they slip against one another under engine torque. This continuous slipping generates thermal energy. The internal temperature of the transmission fluid spikes from a normal operating temperature of 180 degrees Fahrenheit up to nearly 400 degrees. At 400 degrees, the synthetic fluid breaks down at a molecular level, turning into a thick, burnt-smelling sludge. It loses all of its lubricating properties. Worse, the extreme heat warps the steel separator plates inside the clutch drums and glazes the friction material. You might rock your way out of the snowdrift, but your transmission will be ruined, suffering from permanent slipping in every forward gear. If you are stuck in deep snow, never rapidly shift gears. Turn off your traction control, gently apply the throttle, and use traction aids like sand or cardboard under the tires. Speaking of winter driving, our next mistake happens on clear roads on freezing mornings, and it involves demanding maximum performance before the vehicle is prepared to deliver it. Number 2, cold fluid, high RPM abuse. You wake up on a freezing January morning. The temperature outside is sitting at 10 degrees Fahrenheit. You start your vehicle, turn the seat heaters on, and pull out of your neighborhood. You merge onto a highway and press the accelerator pedal to the floorboards to get up to speed. The engine screams toward the red line. You assume the vehicle is fine because you paid for elite engineering. You are wrong. Transmission fluid is a complex oil. Like all oils, its viscosity, its thickness, is dependent on ambient temperature. When the vehicle has been sitting overnight in freezing temperatures, the transmission fluid inside the bottom oil pan is thick. It feels and flows like cold pancake syrup. Under normal driving conditions, the internal pump circulates this thick fluid, and as the friction generates heat, the fluid warms up, thins out, and achieves its operating viscosity. When you floor the accelerator pedal while the fluid is freezing cold, the hydraulic pump attempts to force this syrupy fluid through the paper-thin channels of the valve body at high pressure. The hydraulic resistance creates pressure spikes. These pressure spikes can blow out the paper gasket, sealing the halves of the valve body together. Furthermore, the thick fluid cannot bypass the internal paper filter quickly enough, starving the rear bearings of lubrication. Always allow the transmission to warm up. Drive gently, keeping the engine below 2,000 revolutions per minute for the first 10 minutes of your commute. Treating the fluid with respect is crucial, but what happens when you disrespect the all-wheel drive geometry of your vehicle to save a few dollars at the tire shop? The results are expensive. Number 1. Mismatched tires on 4MATIC systems. If you own a Mercedes-Benz equipped with the 4MATIC all-wheel drive system, you possess incredible traction and safety. However, this drivetrain demands perfection from the rubber meeting the road. Imagine you're driving down the highway and run over a nail, destroying your rear right tire. You drive to the local tire shop. The mechanic informs you that your remaining 3 tires are halfway through their lifespan. To save money, you instruct them to only replace the blown tire with a brand new one. You just initiated a mechanical meltdown that will destroy your central transfer case. Here's the physics behind the failure. A brand new tire possesses full rubber tread, making its circumference larger than a tire driven for 20,000 miles. Because the new tire is larger, it requires fewer rotations to travel 1 mile, compared to the worn-out tires on the other 3 corners of the vehicle. Your 4MATIC computer system monitors the rotational speed of every wheel using wheel speed sensors. As you drive down a straight highway, the computer notices that the brand new tire is spinning slower than the other 3. The artificial intelligence assumes that the other 3 tires are losing traction and slipping on ice. To correct this phantom slipping, the computer commands the central transfer case to engage and disengage its internal clutch packs, trying to synchronize the wheel speeds. As you drive for hours on the highway, these transfer case clutches are slipping, grabbing, and binding. They generate thermal friction, eventually burning the internal fluid to ash and fusing the metal clutches together into a solid block. To save $200 on a tire, you just destroyed a $4,000 central transfer case system. If you own an all-wheel drive vehicle, you must replace tires in complete sets of 4 to maintain rotational geometry. The automatic transmission inside your Mercedes-Benz is not a fragile piece of glass. It is a durable, engineered mechanical marvel designed to last for hundreds of thousands of miles. But it requires an owner who understands the balance of fluid dynamics, thermal management, and mechanical physics. By avoiding these 10 common mistakes, you separate yourself from the average driver who destroys their vehicle. You take control over the lifespan of your machine, ensuring it continues to shift with perfection for decades to come. If this deep dive into the mechanical realities of your vehicle changed your perspective on automotive ownership, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me which of these mistakes shocked you the most. Do not forget to check out the next video on the screen, where we uncover the hidden dashboard buttons mechanics pray you never discover. Keep exploring, keep maintaining your machine, and I will see you in the next video.